Hello and welcome to our bonus video from the documentary series Innocence Lost. I'd like to start this off by saying that I am truly grateful to be able to provide you with this content and hopefully answer some of the questions that you might have about the Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena case. As you no doubt know, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena were two teenage girls that grew up in Houston, Texas, back during the early 1990s. They were tragically murdered on the evening of June 24th, 1993, while attempting to walk through a public park. Sadly, the lives of the girls could have been saved had they gotten a ride back home from their parents. In this video series, we'll be taking a look at the backstories of both girls, the options that they had available to them for getting back home safely, and the reason why I believe this crime was allowed to take place. This particular video will cover the girls' pathway through Jester Park, the location where I believe they were attacked, and also some very important information that could explain their decision for going through the park. Please strap yourself in as we get ready to dive into the bonus content of Innocence Lost. On the evening of June 24th, 1993, Jennifer Ertman and Elizabeth Pena would attempt to walk through a public park in Houston, Texas. The reason for doing so was to make Elizabeth's 11:30 p.m. curfew. This is the official explanation that was given as to why they went through the park. However, I'm here today to tell you that I believe the official narrative is completely false. While it's true that the shortcut that they took through the back of the Clearbrook apartment complex probably is faster than taking their normal path back up Jester Boulevard, the truth is that you can actually take this shortcut without going through the park or even up to the railroad tracks. The shortcut that the girls took involved walking to the back of an apartment complex, pulling back a loose part of the fence, and then sliding through. Once they were on the other side, they actually had three ways of getting back to Jester Boulevard, a street which they would ultimately have to cross in order to get back home. Their first option is by far the simplest, and that is to walk directly east, roughly 600 yards, to Jester Boulevard. The second option is to walk up the railroad tracks, cross the bridge, and then follow it out to Jester Boulevard. The girls' third option is to walk up to the railroad tracks, cross the bridge, then immediately descend downhill and follow it north until they reach a blind hill which they must descend. They'll then need to walk through a stretch of flattened land until finally they could exit the park. Now that we understand the three paths that the girls had available to them, I'd like to point out that the distance between the exit points for all three paths is exactly the same. In fact, it could be argued that paths 2 and 3 are significantly slower than path 1 due to the difficult terrain and the fact that the girls would have to travel west, a direction that would take them away from their destination. If time was truly the reason for going this way, then why choose the slowest and most difficult path? The girls would have started their journey into the park by walking up to the parking lot that you see on the left side of the screen. They would have walked through the stretch of open land to where the fence was. If you look closely at this picture, you can see a light post located on the north side of this field. This is quite possibly the only source of light that the girls would have had available to them as they made their way up to the fence. This tree line runs parallel with the fence, and as I mentioned in my previous video, it would have made it almost impossible for the girls to see what was around the corner. After slipping through the fence, the girls would have headed north along the trail. If we switch over to a ground view, we can see that the overgrowth from this tree blocks the view of the path leading up to the railroad tracks. The girls would have walked around this tree before heading north up to the tracks. It was at this point that they encountered the Sandville brothers, two of the gang members that did not bother the girls. I believe, unfortunately, that it was very shortly after this that they encountered the rest of the gang. What I simply do not understand about this situation is why wouldn't the girls have turned around once they heard these guys up ahead? They probably would not have been able to see them until they were up close to the railroad tracks. However, these guys were all drunk and would have most likely been swearing at each other loudly. I don't believe that the girls stumbled across them blindly, and the evidence supports that they did not have a significant fear of them either, or they would have turned around. Most retellings of this story say that the girls took the shortcut for the sole purpose of making Elizabeth's curfew. But as we already established in part 2, the girls were already too late to make their curfew, and they were in the park of their own free accord. Since we know that the girls were good friends with Gina, and were both so familiar with the shortcut that they were able to take it late at night, despite the poor visibility, this leads me to believe that the shortcut might have actually been their normal path when they were over on this side of town. It's strange to think that the parents of the girls would have felt comfortable with them walking around the city so late at night, especially considering that there had already been 249 murder cases since the beginning of that year, which works out to being on average 1 or 2 per day. In the next part, we'll be taking a look at the parents' response to finding out that their daughters were missing, the time frame in which the police were brought in, and the reason why I believe there's still a lot more to this case than was previously reported. I look forward to sharing that information with you in part 3. I will see you at the next one.